Could an injury out in the Western Conference mean Terry Rozier's on the move? Plus, is there a path to Miami building a top 10 offense? We answered that and more in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio, and I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. David, the fans want to know if the Heat can trade Terry Rozier to the Rockets. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, we wanted to start today by exploring what it would take for the Heat to have a top 15 offense. The last time they ranked in the top half of the league in offensive rating was in 2022. You and I have been planning this show for a couple of days. Then Tyler Herro goes down. He's going to miss at least 8 weeks after undergoing surgery on his left ankle. That's going to impact things, and we are going to talk about how that impacts things. But we're talking about maybe missing a quarter of the season-ish. There's still an opportunity for Miami to climb out of the dredges of offensive ratingville, right? Like they don't necessarily have to be a bottom 10 offense, despite the fact that Herro is going to be missing a bunch of time, and despite the fact that Jimmy Butler isn't here anymore. And we're going to talk about how they can build that offense. We're going to talk about that path on today's show. But we should probably start with what went wrong last year. Because, again, last season, the Heat had an offensive rating of 115. That was actually up from the year prior from an offensive rating of 112.4. But it's still ranked just 21st in the NBA as teams continue to get better offensively, and the Heat just have a hard time keeping pace. You looked at what they wanted to do last year. And, David, we talked about this a lot, specifically in training camp last season. Erik Spoelstra went into last season wanting to get up more threes and play more inside out. Jimmy and Bam on the inside, kicking out the shooters on the outside. Not that they didn't do that a lot before, but they wanted to do it at more volume. And specifically, they wanted to get to the rim. They wanted that three-point shot to open up paths to the rim more, and they wanted to reduce the amount of mid-range attempts that they took, which was why their offense was upside down the year prior to that. Good news is they did that. They were less reliant on mid-range shots than they were 2 years ago. They were a little bit better at getting to the rim, although still not very good, but they were making improvements. And 40% of their shots were from three-point range, which ranked 12th in the NBA. So that was a pretty good mark on a pretty okay field goal percentage overall from three. Tyler Herro, a big part of that. Again, we'll talk about that impact later on. So look, Spo wanted to get up more threes. They did. They got nearly 4 more threes up per game. They reduced the amount of mid-range attempts. They got to the rim a little bit better. And yet it still didn't translate to a better offensive rating. So in your mind, what went wrong, David?
I think it was taking those shots is fine, but I think there's more to it than that. I think you just have to be able to knock down those shots. Like maybe sometimes it's just as simple as being a miss or make or miss league. And I think that's what Miami was missing. It was a lot of those key shots at key moments. I think they were incorporating too many players. I think they were dealing with the stress and confusion of the Jimmy Butler situation. And I think they were kind of figuring out these offenses on the fly in a sense. Like as much as they stuck to a kind of schematic ideology that they could adhere to, the foundation for what they were trying to do, the inconsistencies in the lineup, the constant changes, having to deal with Jimmy Butler being in and then out, and everything that resulted from that made it difficult for them to establish any kind of stability, despite not really dealing with injury as often as they have in years prior. This was still a team that went through several different iterations in terms of trying to incorporate new players, trying to phase guys in, phase them out in Jimmy's case, and trying to find any sort of stability. It always felt like this team was just something that was a work in progress, and then the season was over and they still had nothing that was a consistent lineup. I mean, again, you had to acquire new players after the trade deadline, trying to force Andrew Wiggins in there, testing what you have in Davion Mitchell after you move on from Jimmy. there was just too much going on. And unfortunately, one of the things that we thought would happen this year, which is why we were talking about the exploration of how the offense could improve, is that we thought a whole training camp would allow them to rectify the problems from last year, where they would be able to kind of start building that chemistry. And then Tyler, who we expect to be a significant part of that offense, or at least that was the hope, now he's gone for the beginning of the year, and that changes things. And now, again, you're going to have to go through something similar, maybe not as drastic necessarily, but you're going to have to at least get some kind of a stopgap starting lineup and try to figure out what you can do offensively with Tyler's absence, and then see how you can incorporate him back in without kind of disrupting too much of what they've been able to build over that 8 to 10 week period, let's say.
So you mentioned the Jimmy Butler part of it, and it's a great point, right? Jimmy was the offense, and then he was AWOL, and that tanked their year. You know, I talk a lot about the math problem and Miami being on the wrong side of the math problem. And 2 years ago, when we discussed the math problem, the issue was that they were simply taking so many mid-range attempts that it was essentially, when you got down to the math, impossible to have an above-average offense because they were so reliant on mid-range attempts. And the way I would always do the math is you can have 5 Michael Jordans in your starting lineup at the peak of Michael Jordan's powers. And if you told him you only get to take mid-range shots, Mike, it would be the worst offense in the NBA history.
Yeah.
Like that's the math. And it sounds insane, but that's essentially what the math says. And obviously Miami was doing that without 5 Michael Jordans. So but what allowed them to at least stay afloat to a degree, to at least 21st in offensive rating as opposed to 30th, was that they got to the line a bunch. And that was Jimmy Butler. 2 years ago, they had a free throw attempt rate of that ranked 8th in the NBA. So they did make up for some of that mid-range math issues by just getting to the free throw line. Mm-hmm. Well, last year, like I said, they increased their amount of threes by a large degree and made a good amount of them. They were 12th in three-point shooting percentage. That's a good mark. That's a good number. But their free throw attempt went down. They went from 8th in free throw attempt rate to 24th. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why. Jimmy Butler quit on the team, and then he wasn't on the team anymore. And that's how that happens. And then Bam gets off to a slow start, and the offense tilts more to Tyler Herro's direction, who's very good at getting up those threes, and eliminated the mid-range shots from his game for the most part until they basically needed him to do it over the final stretch of the season. So they made up for the math in that way, but he doesn't get to the line a bunch, right? So you're not really doing that. So that's essentially where I thought it went wrong. You don't have to get to the free throw line to be an elite offense, right? Boston doesn't get to the free throw line at all, and they still have an elite offense. The problem is there's so much stuff that happens in between just a rim shot, a mid-range shot, or a three-point shot. Like, there's so many other things going on. You need to basically be elite at something else, right? In Miami, you look at 4 factors, right? Free throw attempt rate, offensive rebound percentage, turnover rate, opponent turnover rate. You got to be elite at one of those to have an elite. Like, you have to consistently score in one of those factors to be a good offense. And Miami was near the bottom of the league in points off turnovers, fast break points, second chance points. Like, they weren't creating points anywhere else. They were literally relying on, we got to get this shot off, and this shot has to go in. And if it doesn't, we're kind of screwed because we're not getting the offensive putback, and we're not taking the ball away on the other end and scoring, and we're not getting to the free throw line enough. And that was really the problem with Miami's offense last season.
What's the solution then? Like, I think, you said 24th. From what I could see on Basketball Reference, they might have even been slightly worse, 27th. But yet, the Boston Celtics, who were a pretty good team, dead last in free throw attempts. Mm-hmm. The Oklahoma City Thunder, obviously winning the title, they were just above Miami in that sense. So they were just slightly above the Heat.
Because Boston kept turnovers low.
Right.
They don't foul opponents. So the other team doesn't get free throws. So they're winning, and they get a bunch of 3-point shots up. So that's how they win their math battle. I hate talking about basketball in math senses so much, but this is what you have to do if you're a coaching staff. Like, this is how it works, right? Like, at the end of the day, people want to talk about advanced metrics and stuff. Points on the board is still math, right? Like, you either have more than the other team or you don't, and this is how it works.
Yeah, you don't win games by scoring less than your opponent. So
well said.
12 free throw attempts difference between Miami and the Boston Celtics. So can this current roster, even without Tyler Herro, replicate something similar? Can they put up more 3-point attempts? Because both you and I have talked about this, that we think that's the pathway towards Miami being able to build something different than what they have in the past. Even with Kel'el Ware there, even with Bam Adebayo, they're going to have to get some shots at the rim, and hopefully they'll do so with high efficiency. But I think bottom line, they'll still have to find a way to put up a lot of threes. They just don't have the overpowering scorer that can take over games and dominate. And the reliance on the mid-range shot is something I think we'll see less of, as you said, because of the different personnel and things of that sort. But I think they're just going to have to feel comfortable putting up shots. And I wonder if Erik Spoelstra is going to finally kind of let the team loose to that degree. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what his vision for this team and this roster is.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Like, we're trying to figure out what the vision at least should be. We can't predict what Erik Spoelstra is going to do, but like, the math is the math, right? Like, we have the same numbers that the Heat have. Like, this is all right there in front of everybody to dissect and figure out. And I know that Erik Spoelstra is doing it this summer, and that's sort of, I think, the interesting part of doing this exercise, David, is we're doing it. We're going to do it, and we're going to figure out what we think is look, you can't predict whether or not you're going to be a good offense or not, right? For the most part, especially when you have the roster that the Heat have. But you can at least figure out a way, like, what is the thing that puts us on the best possible path to creating a top 15 offense? So we've identified some of the problems. We're going to come up with some of those solutions after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes. You can see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Love the advantage that Monarch gives you in being able to see exactly where your money is being utilized. If there's something that maybe you feel could be a discrepancy or something that you want to change in terms of how you're spending your money, you worked hard for it and you want to be able to save it up and maybe build towards something greater, whether it's a long-term goal or maybe even a short-term purchase, something that is in your future. Monarch Money will help you to achieve it. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. We'll be right back.
So let's just address the elephant in the room. Obviously, you might be saying, why are you even talking about the offense? Tyler Herro's out. This offense is going to stink. And you're probably right. This offense is probably going to stink while Tyler Herro is out. That doesn't mean you give up. He's going to play again this season. And if you're Erik Spoelstra and this coaching staff, you've got to put a plan together that Tyler Herro can return to, although not an ideal circumstance, as you said, David. Like, there's no training camp for Herro to get. I'm going to guess whatever the Heat implement as an offense, Tyler Herro is going to know what it is, right? If the offense is, hey, we're going to shoot more threes, I'm sure Tyler Herro is going to be just fine with that. It's not going to be like, oh, wait, I got to figure out how to shoot more threes all of a sudden, right? Now, I know I'm kind of being silly about this. He needs to obviously learn how to play. He needs to learn the new sets. He needs to learn how to play off of Norm Powell and stuff like that. But generally speaking, if you're the coaching staff, again, not ideal, but you assume Herro will be playing again this year, and you try to work towards that. But it is a huge loss. Herro was Miami's best offensive player last year. Just by sheer production. You look at the on-off stuff. Miami's offense scored 8.1 points more per 100 possessions with Tyler Herro on the court. He was their best offensive player. The Heat had an offensive rating of 116 when Herro was in the game. That would have ranked 7th in the NBA. That's how impactful Tyler Herro was to this offense. Basically, all these problems that we're talking about, Miami has a bad offense, not with Tyler Herro on the court. The problem was when Tyler Herro was off the court, and now he'll be off the court for at least 15 to 20 games. So that is a problem, but we forge forward, understanding that he'll come back, and you got to have something in place when he does come back. You asked about solutions. I want to go back to these 4 factors. To move higher in offensive rating, you need to generate points consistently in one of those areas. And so we talked about offensive rebound rate, turnover rate, opponent turnover rate, and free throw attempt rate. So what I did is I kind of broke them down into offensive styles so that people can kind of put a team to it, right? So, for example, you have the Thunder offense, which is points off of turnovers. Okay, so imagine in your mind what the Thunder look like, what that offense looks like, how they generate points. It's just an okay half-court offense, but they generate a ton of points off of turnovers, and that's how that team ends up top, whatever they were, top 7, I think, in offensive rating. That's how it gets done. So you have the Thunder offense, which is points off of turnovers. You have the Rockets offense, right? Also a problematic half-court offense, but they dominated the boards. They got a ton of second chance points. You could argue Houston's best like their best offense was actually missing shots because they got so many second chance points, so many putbacks, that it ended up being still a positive offense for them. So you have the Rockets offense, which is second chance points. You have the Celtics offense. They win the math battle by making more threes, keeping turnovers down, keeping fouls down. So not giving the ball away. They're not giving up free throw attempts. They'll give up twos, but they're not going to give up extra possessions via turnovers. They're not going to give up and ones or anything like that and get 3 points that way by fouling their opponent. And they're going to take a ton of threes themselves. So they're going to win the math battle that way. That's how they win. And then I have what I call the Luka offense. Because if you look at the Dallas Mavericks over the last few years and then the Lakers over the second half of last season, they just dominated by getting to the free throw line over and over and over again. So you have the Luka offense. So those 4 offenses, the Thunder offense, the Rockets offense, the Celtics offense, and the Luka offense. Which style, based on Miami's roster, do you think that they can most closely emulate?
None. Honestly, they really can't. They don't have the personnel for anything. They can have shades of each, but I don't know that they can lean into any one identity, and that could be a problem. Like the one I see closest, perhaps, just in terms of finding a way to be efficient and put up the number of shots, it would seem easier to try and replicate the Boston offense for this particular group. I think Erik Spoelstra would probably prefer something akin more to the Rockets offense, though, in terms of being able to, force turnovers and create opportunities that way, rebound at a high level. I'm sorry, the Thunder offense, yeah. So, but it just doesn't seem plausible to me. I just don't think they have the.
They don't have the personnel for that, right? You've got Jimmy's gone. Wiggins is a good defender, but he's more of a keep the man, but he stays between the man and the basket. He's not disruptive.
Not forcing turns, yeah.
Herro, who's actually pretty good at generating steals, is going to miss a chunk of the season. Davion Mitchell can do it, but that's one guy, and the Thunder just come at you in waves. So yeah, I don't expect them to do it that way. The Rockets offense to me is probably the least likely one here because Miami is not a good offensive rebounding team. They're a very good defensive rebounding team when Bam is on the court. But in terms of offensive rebound, Bam isn't great at second chance points. Kel'el Ware has, that's the thing that the coaching staff is on him about. That doesn't really generate. Jović, same thing. Like their big men just don't generate offensive rebounds. And by the way, Tyler Herro is one of their best rebounders pound for pound, and he's out. So that's also an issue. So the Houston one to me is a non-starter. Like scratch that one off. That's not going to happen. They're not going to win games that way. The Luka offense is named the Luka offense for a reason. You need a singular player who just gets to the line and gets those calls consistently, and the Heat obviously don't have that guy.
Right.
So I'm with you. I think it's Boston. I think that's the one. And there are some signs, right? We talked last week, David, about Miami being a team that could get up a ton of three-point attempts, right? Where before the Herro injury, we're talking about, hey, a starting lineup that per 100 possessions gets up 40 three-point attempts per 100 possessions. That would have ranked first in the NBA last year. Now with Herro out, that's a problem, but with Davion Mitchell, maybe you throw Nikola Jović into the starting lineup instead of Kel'el Ware. They could get closer to 38 if you maybe ask them to shoot a little bit more, even with Kel'el Ware in there. Maybe they could still get up there. They need to take a lot of threes, I think. And again, you're expecting Herro to be back, and if that's the offense you're going to install, you install it even when Herro is not there so that Herro can walk into it and nobody else has to figure it out. So I look at that one, but a key part of that is A, getting the threes up, B, making the threes, to your earlier point. But the biggest part that I think gets forgotten the most when people talk about the Celtics offense is the other part. Keeping your own turnovers down and not fouling your opponent a ton. And I actually look at this Heat roster and I think that they can do that, right? with Herro out for a chunk of time, with Duncan Robinson not on the roster anymore, there's nobody on this team other than Pelle Larsson who I look at and being like, you're a problem when it comes to fouling opponents. And I actually think their turnovers can come down. Davion Mitchell had a hugely positive impact on their own and opponent turnover rates. So I think if you kind of throw him into the mix, that could be helpful. So if you can get the threes up, like we talked about last week, keep turnovers down, and keep your fouls down, maybe they can get close to the Boston offense.
Do you think Mitchell starting is a size problem for Miami? Because I'm trying to think that maybe they're not going to have anybody good enough that draws defenders away to give him those open opportunities. Like I think Davion benefited as a result of playing alongside Tyler because he was at least able to command some defensive presence there and make those opportunities easier for him. It seemed like Davion got a lot of wide open looks. I don't think he has that respect around the league, and nor should he. Like I think his shooting hasn't been consistent or good enough where defenders are like, oh, he's a threat on the perimeter. They'd rather
I think the
shut
hope
down
is
a guy
that
like
that's
him.
Powell, right? Powell, I think, will be a really interesting ingredient here because he's a little bit more north-south than Tyler Herro is.
Yeah.
And if he's generating shots at the rim and kind of putting pressure on the defense, maybe he's the guy that can generate those open looks. By the way, Davion Mitchell can get downhill a little bit too.
Yeah.
And we talked about this yesterday. Like
But
Bam
this
has
is antithetical.
Bam has to step up.
But that's antithetical towards what we're talking about in terms of trying to emulate the Boston offense. Like, I mean, that's fine that if you're going to be able to attack the rim, you're going to have to do that anyway. But if you're going to rely on upping shots so that you can, I mean, almost 12 3-point attempts more per game than what you did last year, just to be one of the top 1 or 2 teams in the league, I don't care about that. I'm just trying to find out what this team can do and how can they get wide open looks. And I don't know that there's an easy path to that because you're missing an initiator on offense. You don't have anybody that can even command or bend the defense in order to generate wide open looks. You've got solid passing all around, but even still, no great passing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's capable. Like you have versatility there, but you still need something more.
Do you think they could do it when Herro comes back?
I think it'll be easier. And here's another suggestion, though, and this is going to be crazy, and I know it's not going to make any difference because I'm sure Erik Spoelstra is not going to do it anyway. Why not start Nikola Jović?
You're saying Spo's not going to do it. I would not rule that out at all.
I would start Nico almost in place of Davion Mitchell, and maybe that's crazy.
With
but
where?
I mean, almost with where? I know that's your
You're
three
starting
bigs,
every
right?
big on the roster. You're starting. You want to start Vlad Golden too?
All right, Nico
all of our
at the
bigs are just out there to start the
point
game.
forward. Nico at the 3 as your. Well, I mean, what are you going to do? You've got to find some way. Bam at center is no longer an option. That ship has sailed. Because he doesn't want to do it, and I think
he'll do it. But he's proven he doesn't want to do it. But he's not Anthony Davis. He's said he will do it if he has to. If Spo can sell him on it,
fair. But
and they'll still get to those lineups with him and Ware. Maybe it's just.
I'm still hoping they can.
He's going to be placed.
Sign Precious Achiuwa or something. Can they sign Precious Achiuwa even? Just get another quality.
Well, I mean, if Bam is starting at center, then where's your backup center? That solves that problem.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to find out a way of them being able to not struggle as a result of kind of being undersized and having at least an initiator, a playmaker, and Nico there who can help out offensively. He's a guy who, if you pointed out, can get a lot of wide open corner looks. But if he's asked to do something different on offense, more akin to what he did with his, in international basketball during the Eurobasket tournament, then maybe he might be able to, I don't know, just play a little different role here, at least as a stopgap until Tyler returns. Because right now you're asking too much for an offense that just doesn't have the personnel. Like, we love Davion Mitchell around these here parts. He's not a point guard. Like, he's not in the traditional offensive sets. He's not that kind of player. He doesn't initiate offense.
Right.
There are certain things he does well, but I think even he benefited from having somebody like Tyler that's a respected three-point shooter. Does Norm get that respect around the league? I still don't see that
as
either.
a three-point shooter.
Yeah, I don't think people
not as much as Herro does, but but you gotta close out on.
You gotta close out,
and you gotta guard him when he's out there. Like, you're not gonna just leave him open either, and just hope for a rush closeout. But no, I think the Jović option is definitely it has to be, especially with Herro gone. Like, if you start Davion, you kind of need offense somewhere else, right? Because the drop off from Herro to Davion is so much offensively
Yeah.
Like, do you just, and then, the upside defensively on the perimeter is such that maybe you don't even need Kel'el back there, right? Maybe then you go Bam at the 5 with Nico at the 4, and you just do it that way. And I'm with you. I think Nico has a huge role. We've talked about him as an X factor for this team a bunch of times. I think that's a great call. Maybe he's the guy who is like the Jason Tatum of this offense, where you're just like, okay, a point forward who can kind of throw the ball over in every direction. Maybe that's what they do. We talked about Bam. It's going to be on him. To me, we're talking about having a top 15 offense here. It's going to be hard with Herro out. Maybe the more important question is, can it be top 15 when Herro comes back? Can you be a good offense by the time Herro returns for the stretch run of the season going into the playoffs? And that's probably the more important thing here anyway, as opposed to just some number for the full part of the season when one of your most important players was out for the first quarter of it. So I think we're on the right path here, David. We're going to have a final verdict. Plus, did a major injury to the Rockets open up the door for the Heat to unload Terry Rozier? We're going to talk about all that when we open up the mailbag after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You'll love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Well, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. We'll be right back.
Okay, one other thing here before we get to our final verdict. The Heat need to play faster. They need to get into their sets faster. And to do that, I think they need to have a go-to action. I don't know what that is. They need to establish that in training camp. They need to figure that part of it out. But in terms of getting into their sets faster, they rank 23rd in the league in getting shots up within the first 4 seconds of the shot clock. That's bad. They were 25th in the next 3 seconds, within the first 7 seconds. That's bad. They got the second fewest early shot clock attempts in the league, as defined by NBA.com's tracking data, between the 22-second mark and the 18-second mark on the shot clock. They need to be better. Now, I will be clear, having a high pace doesn't have a direct correlation to high offensive rating. There's a lot of teams with a very high offensive rating that play at a very low pace. Okay, LeBron teams do that all the time. Luka teams do that all the time. So you don't necessarily need to be up pace, but I think pace and tempo are different. Tempo, get into your set, get into your offense, don't waste time. When you're and then putting that the defense into a blender and making them make decisions, that's the thing that the Heat need to do. We've talked about that enough. I think that is a stat, and I think you hit on it earlier when Jimmy Butler's in and out and you're dealing with the trade thing and all this stuff. Like, you just don't have an identity, and when you don't have an identity, it's really hard to get into your sets early because nobody really knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
With a full training camp now, hopefully the Heat will know what they're doing and then get into their sets faster. And that's why I say, what's the go-to action? What are your first 2 triggers that you're going to get to on a possession-to-possession basis? And can you operate that way? I think it's why Miami had so much success with the dribble handoff stuff before the league caught up to it. It's just, we're going to go down the court. It's going to be a pistol action. It's going to be a DHO. It's going to be one of these things. And we're going to just do it. And Bam's going to be out there and he's going to pitch it to Duncan Robinson. And that shot, and then the ball is up in the air, within the first 7 seconds of the clock. So can the Heat do that more? That's a big question. Something that I'm sure they're going to try to install in training camp. Final verdict.
I think Mitchell's addition. No, I think Mitchell's addition does help in that. We've talked about that. He does push pace. So I think, and that's why maybe even the exciting possibility of him starting alongside Nico, both of them like to push pace. And so now you have, and Bam as well. Like, I mean, I think there's enough there where if Wiggs can get on board and Norm can be that kind of player as well, I think you could see a faster paced offense. And then that's might be their best opportunity to generate those open threes.
Okay, so I think we have a pretty good sense of where we're at. Understanding that the Heat want to rise in rankings and offensive rating. Tyler Herro is going to miss the first quarter-ish of the season. But when he comes back, can they establish that kind of offense? Based on our conversation, David, here, I wrote down 4 pillars, okay, for the Heat's offense. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we kind of came to a consensus on this. Shoot more threes. They were doing that. It's been going up. They need to do that. It becomes a little bit harder with Tyler Herro out, but when Herro comes back, if he's taking 9 to 10 3-point attempts per game, if Norm Powell is right around there, if Jović is a bigger part of the offense, if Bam is taking threes like he was in the second half of last season, you got Kel'el Ware taking those trailing threes. You got Davion Mitchell taking those open threes the way that he was in Miami, not necessarily in Sacramento or Toronto. You've got Wiggins, who takes way more threes than Jimmy Butler at that position. I think they are going to take more threes on balance, especially when Herro comes back, than they did last season. And they were 12th, I think, in 3-point attempt rate last year or something near that. I think this team can easily be top 10 in 3-point attempt rate. Now, you got to make them, but in terms of getting them up, I think they can do it, right? You can't really control how much you make necessarily, but you can definitely control how much you take. That's why it's the first pillar. Shoot more threes. Do we agree on that one?
Absolutely.
Okay. The other one is keep turnovers down. Jimmy Butler was amazing at that. The one thing about Jimmy is what made him elite a lot of times when he wasn't looking like Michael Jordan in a playoff game. What really made Jimmy Butler elite is what he didn't do. He didn't foul. He didn't turn the ball over. He didn't make mistakes. He was so efficient. And with him out, that really hurts. That said, I still think that there's an opportunity here for Miami to keep turnovers down. And that's going to, like, Kel'el Ware needs to keep the ball up higher. When he's on the court, he can't get that ball stripped away from him. Nico and Tyler have to be a little bit more careful with some of the errant passes that they have every once in a while. Bam's got to be a little bit better. I think he will. I think his turnover rate tends to be down when he's at power forward as opposed to center. When he's got to try to dribble around bigger guys, I think it'll be better when he has a size advantage as opposed to a disadvantage. Keep those turnover rates down. And again, Davion Mitchell actually had a really good impact, positive impact to that when he was on the court. So I expect him to play a big role. Don't foul. Don't foul is the other one. I think this team, if this team can be as good as we think they can be defensively, I actually think their foul rate will go down. Do we agree on that?
I do. I think they've got the personnel for that, and the team-wide ethos is implemented well enough. I think the personnel helps. Like, I think Ware might be the one who might be most foul prone in that starting lineup.
Yep.
Because I think he's still working into NBA shape and
chases blocks a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, a little bit. Especially if he's being pressured, and he should be pressured, mind you, but he has to be able to balance being more aggressive and making smarter decisions at the same time. So that's where the challenge will be for him.
Norm Powell doesn't foul a ton, which is good. You're basically replacing Duncan Robinson on the depth chart with some sort of combination Norm Powell and Drew Smith. And as good as, like, if with Herro out, if Miami's point guard rotation is Davion Mitchell and Drew Smith, those are two very plus defenders at the point of attack. That reduces fouling quite a bit, right? Because not only do you have your point of attack defender isn't fouling as much because you have a good defender at that spot, but also the guys behind him aren't chasing and reaching to make up for maybe some gaffes with that initial point of attack defender. So I think that'll help. I think that has sort of a domino effect, in other words, to the rest of the defense. And then play with more tempo. Get into your sets faster. Have your go-to actions. I want to know more than anything, David, when you close your eyes and you picture Miami's offense last year, what do you picture? Because I don't picture anything.
Yeah,
I have no idea what it looked like.
Yeah.
When you picture, like, the Celtics offense, or you picture the Rockets offense, when you picture Luka Doncic and the Lakers, you know exactly what that offense. You close your eyes, you're like, yep, I have a very clear idea of what the 24th second of that offense looks like and the last second of the offense. I know exactly what kind of process they want to go through. With Miami, I just had no idea. So play with more tempo, have an identity, have your go-to sets installed, ready to go by the start of the season.
Is there a site that monitors 24-second violations? Because I get the feeling Miami would probably rank highest.
Yeah, probably over the last few years, right?
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes it's just their desire to get the best shot available and their lack of initiator, dominant offensive player probably just leads to a lot of over dribbling and then trying to find a seam here that you can capitalize. And I feel like last year in particular, especially without Jimmy and him being in and out of the lineup, there just wasn't any available score or go-to score that would kind of dominate in that sense. And a lot of shot clock violations. So I wonder where they ranked among that.
Yeah, so also don't do that anymore. All right. So I think we came up with a good blueprint. We'll see whether or not the Heat can follow that blueprint, but I think this was a very helpful and instructive exercise. We did not get to the Rockets, Fred VanVleet, Terry Rozier stuff. We're going to save that for a little bonus episode on the other end of this, so be on the lookout for that in your podcast and your YouTube feed. Let us know what you think in the YouTube comments about our plan for the Heat's offense. Do you think it'll work with or without Tyler Herro when Herro eventually does come back? Is there anything that we missed? Do you think that the Heat need to add anything on offense that we didn't talk about? Thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day.